the first Converge video I did for free, straight up.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, there's no reason. I mean, why would they trust some random ass kid in Kentucky? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So it is what it is, but it worked out.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I feel very blessed to be able to do some FaceTime with this borderline celebrity on the other end of the.
No.
I think so. Max, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
For sure. Thanks for having me. This is cool.
Yeah. So, the proper introduction for you is you are a cinematographer based in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm sure anyone who's listening or watching this has at least seen one of the music videos that you've been a part of. But can you give me a little formal introduction on who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, my name's Max Moore. I would categorize myself as a director, a music video director, first and foremost, but also more recently been directing commercials and other things. But yeah, I actually live in Louisville, Kentucky. Grew up in the punk and hardcore scene here, playing music. And then at some point I decided to go to film school at Western Kentucky University. It's like an hour north of Nashville. And while I was studying film, this big background and punk and hardcore, and my friends were still in bands, and that kind of naturally led its way into directing music videos. And I've been rocking that for the last few years. It's been like 8 years I've been doing this full time.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, just pumping out music videos and kind of never looked back. Just staying busy and making a living and having fun while I'm doing it. So that's the gist.
Yeah, and I definitely want to chat about some of this maybe recent videos that you've done and some of your past ones, and maybe just the whole idea about like hardcore or DIY music in general and music videos, because I think that there might be some people that we can pull on the side of like, despite whatever genre of music that you play, music videos is a great way to, package that song or that album or whatever
Totally.
it is. But with anyone who comes on the podcast, I always like to get like their origin story on how they got into just music in general. So can you let's go back in time to kind of those formative years.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I have 3 brothers, including an identical twin. And all of us play music. So me and my brother's name's James. It was just a really musical household. We all play music, and we were the youngest. So my older brothers, were the ones that were at first just getting us into, they were the tastemakers. You always want to do what your older brothers do. And so my oldest brother was the one that got us into like punk and alternative music. And so just growing up around that, like, listen to these CDs at the time, like this is the 90s, he would put on and stuff. And so that's kind of how we got into it. And then high school, I was in a lot of different bands. It wasn't just like a traditional hardcore band. I mean, I was in like instrumental band that sounded like a rock Explosions in the Sky or whatever. So like it didn't just specifically, it was just anything kind of alternative. And I played in lots of different bands. And so touring and doing all that stuff, like late high school. And that's where I met a lot of bands who ended up, becoming really popular. At the time, we're all just like kids figuring it out. Yeah, let's jump in a van or whatever. And so, like I said in the little intro, when I decided to go to Western to study film, that was kind of like the ending of my, whatever you want to call like music career. That's not a career at all. I was just playing, playing in bands and shit. And so I really kind of sidestepped and shifted. I was always into video and like loved movies and stuff. It wasn't just like a random, let me go quit worrying about music and do this. Like those were always going side by side.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, it was just a natural progression. Like I was still heavily involved in the music scene, not just in Louisville or Kentucky or anything like that, but just touring and knowing bands that were kind of around back then.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of it in just with, different labels and stuff like that. So one of my first music videos was with Code Orange, and also Converge was one of our very first music videos, which is cool.
Right. Wow.
So doing those two videos, kind of getting in with like No Sleep Records, which my at the time that was like kind of a poppin' label back then, like 2010, 11, whatever. And my brothers was in a band called Xerxes, and they were on No Sleep. So doing videos for them.
No Sleep had that like coffee mug in their logo.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And then very much like doing a ton of Death Wish videos at that era, and all that kind of just snowballed. Like, at that time period, 2010, 11, 12. I mean, I kind of snuck into the music video industry when bands like hardcore bands, I feel like it wasn't really cool for a second to like, nobody made music videos in 2009. Sure. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the music industry was just very different. Streaming hadn't caught up. YouTube wasn't really like what it is at all. So I feel like, I was just a kid in college with a fucking DSLR, and I kind of slid into, as YouTube rose back up and everybody got the hang of like streaming and what, understood what like the viralness of a music video could in the modern age.
Yeah.
The demand began to grow, and that kind of coincided perfectly with me getting out of college and like being like, I've already made like a few music videos this year while in school. I can straight up do this full time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's a couple points I want to unpack there, because I think, talking about how YouTube was just, it was definitely like YouTube was more of like watching videos of cats playing piano.
Exactly.
And like, people like falling or whatever, but not in a sense of like a way to, like you said, build a viral moment as far as, either the contextual nature of a video, depending on where it is, the time of the release, but or also just maybe the mass amount of production value that goes in.
Right.
Whereas as far as like, because I've met people who do video just like me, who have more of a film background than myself. I have a bunch of influences with YouTube, but also like with things like Machinima, which is like making videos with video games.
For sure. Right.
So what was kind of your, again, going back a little bit, just so I can fully understand, what were kind of those pivotal things that made you want to pick up a camera to run around with your friends in bands and shoot stuff?
For sure. Well, two things, like on a straight up like beyond music, like this is dorky as fuck, I don't even care, but like in middle school I was truly obsessed with Lord of the Rings. And so like, being a young kid, and those are huge movies, like they came out 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade for me. Yeah. And so it was like just such a like classic time period where for a young kid to be obsessed with that.
Right.
And watching like behind the scenes DVDs of them making it was like fascinating to me. So I always like was interested in video, and then in a really pivotal age I was like, dude, that's so cool, I gotta like, so I literally recreated like the first 20 minutes of the video of the movie. It's hideous, it's black and white, it's funny. But yeah, so that was like a big thing just early on. And then more in high school when I was getting into like, playing music and alternative shit. I remember coming home from school and like watching Fuse TV. And some kids like, I turned 30 in a month, so this might be before some people's time, but it was basically just like a music video channel. And that was super influential to me, because this was like, again, pre-YouTube. So that's kind of how at least I connected and watched music videos, like alternative videos. So I remember, as cringeworthy as it is, like Under Oath music videos and just shit like that, like My Chemical Romance music videos, like those like mid late 2000s stuff like really inspired me,
Right.
especially like just the darkness of it.
Right.
Like some of those Under Oath music videos are fucking, I still think they're great.
Yeah.
So that really inspired me in that way to like lean, and a lot of my earlier work was darker just because it was like hardcore bands,
Right.
mostly metal and hardcore and whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I've done all kinds of shit now, and you know, I've made pop music videos and whatever. But earlier on, I was really inspired by that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, the podcast that I released today, you know, my friend Taylor brought up a good point, just talking about like, you know, in the early late 90s, you know, like places like MTV or Much Music would like premiere these music videos for like heavier bands like Korn, Slipknot, Mudvayne,
Right.
you know, System of a Down, what have you. And I'll be the first to admit, like, you know, I would come home from school, I would go on YouTube and I would just watch the related videos of all those like bands that I like, and that's how I got put onto like so many different bands. And you know, now things maybe are a little bit different with algorithms and whatnot, and maybe we can get into that. But as you mentioned, the very first video that you shot as far as a music video is concerned is, you mentioned Converge, and there was one other,
Code Orange.
Yeah. And so talk to me about like, you know, obviously as you have more experience over the years, you know, your gear can kind of like get better and you can, you know, hire more people on, so you have a bigger team. But what were kind of the first things as far as those first videos? Like, were you solo? Did you have like just like one camera with one battery? What was going through your mind?
I mean, it was back then, I mean, the budgets were nothing, and you know, I was like a fucking kid, so you know, what I would consider a tiny budget then was huge to me then, or what I would consider tiny to me now was huge then. And so it was just me, like straight up. I had like a Canon 60D and like a stock lens, and you know, this was also a time period like before like DSLRs were, I mean, they were just getting popular,
Right.
but they weren't like, you know, it was right in that era too. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, I just was totally DIY, would just shoot shit in my basement, or I would just rent lights from my, from the film programs, like storage closet over the weekend, and I would drive back to Louisville and like just light the scene myself and shoot it, or like make my sister-in-law be in it, or you know, or friends, and all kinds of shit. So it was literally just like whatever means necessary. And if there was behind the scenes of like some of those early videos, there would be nothing. It would just be me, you know, like it would be so hideous.
Yeah.
You know, you turn the camera around and it's like I'm in my bedroom, you know, just filming random shit. So, but even though like now my filmmaking looks very different, and we have like, it's very scheduled, and I mean, it's like a traditional like team and film production set, but I still carry that kind of DIY spirit. Like I'm not afraid to do something myself, or like shoot a pickup scene myself or whatever, you know. Just, I haven't been shooting the last few of my music videos. I've been working with the DP that's in Louisville. And you know, it doesn't really change your attitude, or at least for me, my attitude on filmmaking hasn't changed just because the budgets have gone bigger and the crew is bigger and the process is more laid out. I still have that mentality of like, you know, you got to be creative, because I mean, even the budgets I'm getting, which are good, you know, for art, that kind of music, you know, compared to like a commercial or something, they're still all low budget. So you got to be able to think outside the box and like, you know, just make it happen.
Yeah. Do you think that that mindset of like do it yourself or being DIY, like obviously like that was something that was, you know, something I learned when going to shows and seeing people like throw together something, and you know, being able to look back and be like, whoa, this is crazy how all these things came together. Do you think that has kind of been a strength of yours when it comes to your music videos? Because I know like I've met people who have more of a film background who are maybe a little bit more fancy on like how they do things, and you know, I'm just kind of curious on what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like it was such a part of my DNA growing up with the music scene. Like it's not even something I think about consciously.
Right.
You know, the do it yourself, just kind of make it happen vibe is the reason. I mean, you can be a great filmmaker or a great music video director, but you know, if you're not constantly hustling to get work, or to make the shit, then it's not going to be sustainable for a career.
Yeah.
And so beyond just like the making the video part, like the DIY-ness, like for years, like, I mean, I've sent fucking thousands of cold emails to artists and labels. And that's like what people, I mean, luckily now I have a great team. I signed with a production company in LA, and I have I'm repped for music videos and commercials. And so luckily I don't have to do that anymore, and people hit me up, and that's great. But, I have people hit me up all the time, and they're like, how do I get into music videos? And it's like, well, where do I start, dude? I've been grinding my ass off for years.
Right.
And every Saturday or between classes in college, like, it's cringeworthy, but like the people, it's going back to that DIY thing. Like, hey, if you really like whatever band, hit them up. I mean, now there's more access than ever. There's like, go to their Facebook page, find their manager's email and email them.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all but so many people forget that, or they don't have that instilled in them, that you can just ask, or you can just put yourself out there.
Right.
And so beyond just like doing it yourself and figuring it out and being creative on the actual making side of things, I always also attribute my success, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, just been able to work. That DIY spirit helps me like get work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the more podcasts and more involved with like scope that I'm doing, like the more that I'm realizing how entrepreneurship and hardcore are like so intertwined with like how you have to do things. Like you mentioning like hitting up a manager of a band if you could shoot a music video, like the access is totally there, like you said, but also recognizing like it might take 100 emails or cold emails to like maybe get that first offer, and that's the thing that starts it. And learning how to take, because I'm sure there was plenty of no's in the early days for you, as far as like
sure.
who is this kid? I don't know who he is. So
totally. And even on like I mean, things are been pretty slow with the pandemic, obviously, but like normally, like nowadays with my rep or the production company I'm with, there's no's all the time. And the normal process, even if an artist hits me up and they want me to, to work with me, it's always like, for music videos, it's like, you got to write a treatment. And so often my rep will say, here's the blah, blah, blah new single, Max, do you want to write? And I'll say, yeah, sure. And so I'll spend the day writing a treatment, send it off. And my rep will send it to the video commissioner at the label or whatever. But they're also collecting, multiple treatments from other directors. So it's like you're bidding your idea against everybody else. So there's been it's always a hustle. Like I've had thousands of treatments, not thousands, but like a fuck ton of treatments. I haven't gotten a job.
Right.
And that's just the nature of the beast. Like that's how it goes. Yeah. So,
and for anyone who's listening, who's maybe not super proficient on the technical terms of that, a treatment is essentially your pitch of like how the video would look and those kind of things.
It's basically like a PDF document with like pictures, and you just say, this is the video I want to make. This is how I want to make it. This is what it will look like. This is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And if they dig it, then you get the job and you budget it out and you go do it, so
right.
It's a hard process to like, for a video to end up on screen for you to watch. Like there was so much work that went into just like making it happen.
Right. So let's chat about some of the recent music videos that you've done. And, when I found out that you were based in Louisville, it almost made so much sense on how much work you've done with bands like Knocked Loose or Code Orange. Just like regionally, you're super close with them. But you also mentioned you're like, and maybe it's just like the freelance cinematographer game, but you're always kind of flying around in a normal setting to places around the world. So maybe what have been some of your highlights on some of your most proudest projects in the last year or so?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I've made a fuck ton of music videos over the years, and not all of them I'm proud of, but I can definitely say, I don't know, this last year, I've really just been enjoying the work that I've been making. You know, everything just feels right. And I'm really proud of the last few videos I've made. And it's not to say old work I'm not proud of.
Right.
I'm just saying I'm just been really stoked on the stuff we've been making. Part of that is just I've just been working with a great crew and a really solid DP. His name's Nate Spicer. He's in the same city as me, and just nice to collaborate and try new things and not just do everything yourself.
Sure.
But yeah, some highlights for me. The two new Code Orange videos that came out recently, those were hell to make, but I think people really liked them for the most part.
Right.
And so that's cool. I mean, that dominated my end of my year and beginning of my year was those two videos. We shot them back to back.
Right. Yeah. Because they kind of flowed into one another really, really nicely.
For sure. They were made to be,
part 1 and 2 in a way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I have to shout out my friend Devin. I was chatting with him prior to our call, but he wanted me to ask if there was some influence from Tool in those music videos, because he said that when he was watching those, that was the vibe that he was getting.
First, I mean, the thing, not directly from me. The thing about working with Code Orange and so many other bands I work with, it's like I'll just submit a treatment and we do that. You know what I mean? This is totally my Code Orange is another beast where they're really fucking specific on, like, they know who they are, they know what the visuals are, and so I got to give credit to Jamie. He was the drummer, now he's the standalone vocalist, whatever. But he fully like wrote these concepts and was like, Max, this is what I want to do, and then I took them and regurgitated it in my own way and put them into treatment form.
Yeah.
So much of like the tone and visual references, that was already there for them. I was just kind of, how do I make this actually doable? And you know what I mean? So that's a better question for him, where he had some of those ideas.
Yeah.
Not to say I didn't write any of it, but like definitely the Code Orange is another beast, knowing exactly what the fuck they want.
For sure. And that's always, any creative would say they love working with like-minded individuals who have that kind of those creative juices versus like how do you want it to look? It's like, I don't know, you're the video guy. And
right.
Like, well,
sure.
Okay. And then you do something that they don't like. So,
well, I like both sides. Like, it's really nice to work with somebody like Code Orange who's like very specific, and we can be collaborative and do a bunch of calls, and like there's no barrier. I've worked with them so much that like I can literally call Jamie on the phone and we can talk about it at any time of the day.
Right.
Other artists, it's like manager to manager, and it's very email or like phone calls with a bunch of other people, conference calls, and feels like business.
Yeah.
And there's like boundaries. I don't have their number. They don't, you know what I mean?
Right.
And there's also something great to be said about like having the freedom to just do my idea and they trust me. So that's the thing I like about music videos, is that they're all different, and that's what keeps it fresh. And every process is different, every video is different, so it doesn't. And people are like, how can you make that many music videos and still be into it? Well, that's the thing. It's like it's always changing. The process is always changing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So
something that I noticed is that you in a large majority of your music videos is you use a lot of like color work, like to kind of make things pop. Speaking of Code Orange, like the video you did for Forever,
right.
Largely black and white, but really push that like red aspect of their album. I saw one music video, I'm blanking on the artist's name, but there was just like every shot had like two tones to it, whether it was like yellow and pink or orange and bright blue or something like that. So is that kind of like your way of putting your fingerprint on a video? But obviously, like if someone wants something very like washed out and grainy,
for
like,
sure. Yeah, I don't really like consider myself as like having a style or something, a hallmark that I like try to consciously do.
Yeah.
Honestly, like for anything that comes out as a style that anybody could pick up, it's probably just unconscious just because I'm making it, and it's like going through my brain and my eyes what I find like appealing. And there's a certain way that like I tend to shoot bands.
Yeah.
I think that would be something. And yeah, I guess I'm attracted like bright colors and something that pops. You know, music videos it's like eye candy. You know what I mean? Like you want it to just catch your attention, and like if it's on Instagram, people hit like, you know what I mean? Like, so if there's any way to draw attention to it and make it more noticeable, then I'm all for that. But you know, I don't have like a set like, oh, this is something I always do.
Right.
But hopefully, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, but I think the overall idea that you were kind of bringing up is like creating something visually stimulating, because there is so much content on the internet nowadays. You know, more videos being uploaded every day.
Exactly.
But yeah, does that come in the treatment when you're writing it, or more when you're going into pre-production of like, not like what's a video that I can shoot that can be like not memeable but viral? Like what are some of the strategical creative decisions that you're making in the pre-production process?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, at least for me, every creative is different, but for me, my treatments are pretty, if you look at the treatment and what was made, it's like very, very similar. And I like color grade my treatment, the reference photos.
Okay. That's interesting.
So I already established a look. It's not to say that I can't change it if, you know, or if the artist wants something different later on, but if you actually looked at my treatments and what was made, they're really, really similar. And not everybody like puts as much work into their treatments as possible, or as I do, but you know, I like Photoshop shit, and sometimes I go, you know, take a quick reference photo, and I have like a massive bank of on my computer, just images and things over the years, references. So as I'm writing, I'm kind of like going back to those and using those.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I would say like a lot of, for like, let's say Code Orange, for example, like the Forever video, it was definitely like black and white and red from the beginning. Like that was in the treatment. All the text I used in the treatment was red. Like there's no text in the video, but those are like subtle ways that you can, when you're looking at the treatment, you're like, okay, I get the tone. You know what I mean?
Right.
And same thing for the recent Code Orange videos. Like they were all colored the same way.
Right.
The treatment is where they were in the video. And a lot of that is because with a band like Code Orange, they're really specific about, this is the artwork we're trying to reference.
Right.
There's already colors and things involved. You know what I mean? But if it's like a pop artist or like pop punk, and it's just like a one-off single, that there's not like this big campaign, like every music video is different, then there's less structure or like worry to like reference something. Yeah. It'll just be like, oh, this is like a fun music video and it should feel bright and poppy, but it's not referencing the album art or anything. So it really just depends.
Yeah, and that's no different than like the different shade of blue, the first music video that you did, where it's like primarily on a white background or a white room, if you will, but then there's all the blue
totally
rain or goo or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. That was a good
Yeah, I had someone who was goofing on that video who doesn't like that band, that said it was like porta potty water.
That's classic.
I'm sure you've heard that so many times.
Dude, it doesn't even faze me. Honestly, I'm just stoked for something to come out, to make it to a place where it comes out and fans are reacting one way or another. That's a win for me. You know what I mean? I've had so many music videos go up and look at the comments and people saying whack shit, but you know, I'm already on to like the next one by the time.
Right. Do you go back and look at those videos, or are you just kind of like, it's off my plate, I never want to look at it again?
I go back and watch some stuff if I haven't seen a video in a while.
Yeah.
But like recently, I saw, it was just on my homepage on YouTube for the Rabbit Hole Code Orange video.
Right.
There's people do like these reaction videos on YouTube. It's like fans or like whatever, like metalheads like reacting to, and they watch the music video and react to it. So that's been like really hilarious to watch, just these people like either being like, this sucks, I don't understand it, or whoa, what the fuck. But because like for me, like if any way I'm seeing what fans are saying about a video, it's always in comment form.
Yeah.
But to like see somebody live that's not an experience like I have often, so
Right.
I kind of dig it.
Yeah,
Even if it is like a child reaction.
like I'm sure there's a couple of people watching. Like I have my own opinion on like React channels. That's something that at least at this point I don't want to ever submit myself. But I do agree that there is something about like seeing someone's raw like reaction to something. Like
I'm not saying I love reaction. I'm just saying I like watch a
right.
few.
It's an interesting way to really see.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go start a reaction YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But
I think that there's certain things because like I saw Jake Lures from August Burns Red. He was reacting to the newest Ghost Inside video for their newest song, and like like largely speaking, like that's not something that I'm like subscribing to, but I'm like, okay, that's something I want to see because like he's really connected to this band, and it was like like when I watched that video, it was like tearing me up. So like seeing him like get emotional and talk about that process on like this is someone that I've like toured with and I'm close with.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was something else.
I got hit up to do one or two of those videos, but it didn't work out just for scheduling, and I think it was right before quarantine, and just never happened. But
so
I watched. Definitely a lot of emotion in those.
Yeah. So can you kind of mentioned it, but as far as like the process of like is it the record labels primarily hitting you up or bands specifically? Like how do you like you're not in a place anymore that you have to like constantly like send out the cold emails. Like you're pretty connected in the industry. So can you kind of pull back the curtain to those who are kind of curious on like on that side of things?
Sure. Well, I'll say there's two sides of things, and I'll say like the indie label side and then the major label side.
Sure. Okay.
So the indie world, what I'm calling the indie world is, like Fearless Records, Rise Records, Hopeless, all those kinds of labels, maybe even like or like Pure Noise, and like these are labels that I work with consistently over the years.
Yeah.
Death Wish, whatever. And so that's more like direct conversational, just like a manager of a band or somebody at the label. If there is a video commissioner at the label, often like Epitaph, there's one person that just commissions music videos. So that person will hit me up and say, hey, do you want to write? Sometimes it's like broad and they tell me that, do you want to write? And I kind of know that there's other people writing on it. But other times it's a direct thing and they're saying, hey, the artist is a fan of your work. Do you want to submit a treatment? And you get the sense that it's a single bid.
Sure.
I guess they call it, like it's just you. No one, you're not competing for it.
Yeah.
And so that it's very much like relationships, or like managers that manage several bands, like, hey, email me and say I have this, and it's like just relationship kind of things, because I've worked with all those different entities for years. But the major label side of things is very, that's what I was talking about earlier with my rep. And I signed with this new production company at the start of the year called Tough Contender. And so if it's a major label kind of side of things, then they're going to produce the video. It's bigger budget, and there's just a lot more people involved. Mm-hmm. And so normally there's always going to be multiple people writing, unless you have a direct connection with the band. But that's like, very formal. There's no direct contact. It's like, their video commissioner hits up music video reps and, hey, what of your directors would be interested in this? And then my rep will say, Max, do you want to write? And I'll submit a treatment, and then I'll hear back, you didn't get it, or congrats, you got it. And so it's just really, in that sense, like it's really competitive and really hard to get work, for obvious reasons, just because, you're going against, really good directors and the indie side of things, like, I have a relationship with bands that I've worked with a ton, and it's always easier to get a music video when you know the people.
Sure.
But I've had it happen all different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
But it's just like any business. It's like who the biggest thing is relationships. Even on the major label side, the more you get to know the video commissioners there, the more they trust you with big projects and things like that. Not to scare away people to like, if they're trying to get into it, like there's ways to be cold email, and they don't just always work with repeat people, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think like anyone who, you know, they don't have those connections or things like that, like think about like what are the things that you can offer, like what are valuable. Like if you feel like you're a really good like videographer and you don't have any connections, like, you know, even going to the point of being like, hey, I will make a music video for this band for, you know, this upcoming release that's coming up, and I'll do it for free. And
Exactly.
doing that could be the thing that like connects you to get you those jobs.
Oh, I do that. The first conversion video I did for free, straight
Yeah,
up. I was like, I mean, there's no reason. I mean, I could have. I mean, why would they trust some random ass kid in Kentucky? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
so it is what it is. But you know, yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, and like, you know, there's probably another timeline where like maybe you were like, oh, can I get $500? And they're like, actually no, and then, you know, we wouldn't be doing this podcast. So
For sure.
you know, I fully respect if people are like, know your value, know your worth, but like if you don't have any connections and you're not known and you want to, I feel like not a fast track, but a good first step is just like my time is you know,
I
is
think
what
there's a
can
fine
give.
balance between like putting yourself out there and giving the client an incentive to work with you.
Right.
Like you don't have any clout, you've done nothing. Like just put yourself out there and be willing to like make an investment. That's what people see. And if you kill it, then they'll give you a budget or a little bit more money. It's a snowball effect. And then you gotta walk the line, because you don't want to just be known as like the low budget person.
Yeah.
You don't want to always like just be bending over backwards to make content for other people.
Yeah.
But it comes with time, you know, and experience. But it's a hard thing to rush, in my opinion.
Well, like there's, you know, there's loads of guests that I want to eventually get on this podcast, and like, you know, I feel very lucky that we're able to jam on this, but at the same time, like you're not like, oh well, you know, I'll do a, you know, a podcast, and you know, maybe if there might be some people that if I hit them up now, they'd be like, we're down to do it, but like, you know, there's like a price involved or something like that. So like, yeah, there's always like the thing that I'm always reminding people is like doing free work is not demeaning. Like it is potentially the unlock to get your creative thing really out there. So
Totally. I definitely agree with
that. Yeah. As far as like, you know, so we talked about like, as far as like the bidding and things like that, you know, the thing for anyone who's not involved in video production is like the actual shooting is maybe the least amount of time. And then the editing and, you know, pre-production also takes a load of time. So can you kind of tell me like, what's the actual like turnaround time for like maybe, you know, maybe the Code Orange videos is maybe not the best example because there's a lot of creative decisions leading up to that. But maybe you can talk about that Knocked Loose video that we were talking about. What's kind of like the amount of time that you spend on the editing side, in the pre-production side, and then production as well?
Yeah. So let's just say it's a video I'm self-producing. Like the Code Orange videos, I didn't produce those. You know, we had a fairly sizable crew, and they were just too big for me to handle.
Right.
But even if I'm not producing, you know, all the pre-production, I'm still heavily involved in informing the departments, having calls, etc. But like the Knocked Loose thing was a smaller crew, and I just self-produced it. We shot it in Louisville, Kentucky. We live in the same city, so that's convenient.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just depends. Like I've had times where we've had like a week notice to like 7, 8 days or something between it, like when we need to shoot and when I'm writing the treatment. I've also had like months, you know, right. So it depends, but usually it's pretty quick. Just like get it done. Like, hey, are you interested? We need to treat. Often I'll get hit up on a Friday. Here's the single. Can we get something by Monday? It's like, fuck, gonna work for the weekend. But to deliver, or, you know, a few days, a day to write a treatment, whatever. And then once it's approved, I would probably say anywhere from like a week to 3 weeks of pre-production. And that's not like, you know, as you get closer to it, then it gets more intense. You know,
Sure.
it's not like
It's
you're
not like
working
9 to 5
every
just
waking
on
second.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm doing several projects at once
Right.
at different stages. So and then you'll shoot for mostly one day with music video budgets, but Code Orange we shot in 3 days. With like the Knock Loose mistakes like Fractures, that was just a 1 day shoot. It was like a 12-hour day. And then after that, what I like to do for an edit is have at least like 2 weeks. And that's like totally comfortable. I can, get a first cut done in like a week, and then I send it to them and they give notes and we go through a series of revisions. Usually it's not much and I'm lucky with that.
Yeah.
And I do all my own editing mostly. Like 99.9% of my videos I edited. And then, but I've also had times where I've had like just a few days after we shoot, the video's gonna come out. So I'll just fucking hunker down and like, dude, I mean, even the Code Orange videos, like the deadlines we shot right before Christmas, but I took a little break off and then the videos came out in early January.
Wow.
So, I mean, those edits were literally brutal. I spent 17 days from January 1 to January 17th. I edited 12 to 14-hour days for the first 17 days of the year.
Wow.
It was like I've done a lot of time inside like this year, quarantine and like making those videos, but not every edit is that intense. Like the Code Orange one was just so fucking insane with all that.
Do you like something that I've seen with like some other music video, like something that I do with a lot of my stuff, not on the scope side, but more on my freelance stuff, is like always editing to like the beat of like, whatever royalty free song it is, or if it is a music video. So like, I know that there are certain like music videos that are like very spastic in the editing, just jumping between things and you don't really know what's going on. So is that an editing style that maybe like you're not a fan of, or you're trying to, you're still trying to make a video like intense as far as, if it's a, that Varials, you've done a couple of videos for them. But, I watched some of those videos back and there are still shots that really hang for like a good, 2, 3, maybe even 4 seconds. So how do you balance those on the editing side for you at least? Yeah,
I mean, well, going back to the music thing, like I played bass and drums and all the bands was in, so it's like the rhythm section, so being a drummer and editing to the beat like comes pretty natural to me. Like, and I can hear, the fill and the way that it, I can actually, I space out and listening to the downbeat and putting but that's, I'm like OCD with that. Like some editors are just, they do it off feel. Like I always edit to the drums.
Right.
Mostly, especially for like aggressive music, it's always like the rhythm of whether it's like the bass drum pattern or like on the snare. But like for a pop artist, you might want to edit for like a cadence of a like a vocal line. Sure. It's more important. People want to see that full vocal line before you cut away, rather than that it's on a snare beat. You know what I mean?
I see.
It just depends on the situation, but for the most part, like in general, compared to other people, I'm like unbelievably OCD on editing on the beat. And like I have a very specific way of how I edit, and like, the intro should be this, and then verse 1 is this section, and the chorus we're see full band for the first time, and like there's, you know what I mean? Like I write my treatments like that. Or even if I don't put it in the treatment, like I already know like what's going to happen at certain points, because to me a good music video is all about spacing and timing. Like you don't want to, if you have like 3 setups for, you have them in this room and this room and this room performing, if you all intercut those within the first 10 seconds of the video, there's nothing, you leave nothing else. Right. Leave one for the downbeat of the chorus. Fuck, the new thing. There it is. Right. So to me, like, it's all about spacing and being on beat. Hopefully that.
No, I think like that's a great point there. Just talking about like, don't show your full hand, within the first 2 seconds of the video. I have noticed that like with some of your videos too, there's kind of like a, you know, even if there's no story necessarily, if it's more just like visual elements, like there's still an arc as far as like once it hits that like super heavy breakdown or that like bridge, you know, something changes, whether, you know, a new color is introduced or like a new space is introduced.
Right. Exactly.
Do you think a lot about just like environments for certain videos, just so people, because like anytime I think of a certain music video for a song, I can always kind of like picture where that is, whether, you know, like the classic thing is like, oh, there's a Harm's Way video in like a hospital, but then there's also one in a forest, and you know there's one in a rusty factory. So
For sure.
do you write those into your treatments as well to kind of set
Yeah,
the
definitely.
space?
It's for like a logistical reason on top of creative. It's like,
Sure.
you know, you have one day to shoot like those size music videos, you know, there's small budget and, you know, you don't have a lot of money. You can't do a ton of locations.
Right.
So it's like, what's a world that we can exist in? What's an actual physical location we can be in? And we can shoot this way for the verse, or like have this lighting for the verse. And on the choruses, we could turn around and redress this. You know, like the Harm's Way video in the warehouse was like the same room that we dressed as like a hospital. And then, you know what I mean? So it very much like I'm always thinking logistically, like what city are we shooting in? If we're in LA, like I know different sets, standing sets, or like locations that I could shoot in, and you kind of write to that, because if you just make up something, like I want it to be on top of a skyscraper, but you don't have access to that,
Right.
or you don't have any plan to make that happen. When you get awarded the video, they're going to expect you to make it happen. So
Right.
for me, it's really easy. It's creatively to start with the location to write. Like I'm writing a treatment today, and I like before I even wrote the treatment, I checked in with the location, like, hey, could we shoot here? Oh, also partially because of the lockdown, like just making sure.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
But like it's always easier for me to take a location, even if it's not like I don't have a specific one locked in. It's like, oh, it's a shitty motel. Well, I know we can find a shitty motel somewhere.
Right.
But and then I build the world, the story, or the performance. It's in the shitty motel room, and then it's in the courses in the lobby, or you know, you think about
Sure.
that. That's kind of how my brain works, at least when I'm writing.
Have you ever had any things, whether it's like a not a venue, but like the space that you're trying to set for the music video, either go sideways, day of, or leading up to it, and how did you kind of adapt on the fly there?
Yeah, I've definitely had that happen. More early on, when it was just like me, just like figuring it out, like
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
producing and being in weird, sketchy places that we didn't have permission. But these days, like I'm paying all the locations. We have all the proper shit, you know. But yeah, I'm trying to think of if I have a cool anecdote or something. But yeah, I mean, the thing about in general, I would say, is music videos and film production in general, there's always something that goes wrong. So to being able to go back to that DIY vibe, like if the location fucks up, or like you know, you're shooting in like I'm pulling this out of my ass, like a restaurant that's supposed to be closed, but the last minute they say, oh, here's an example. I just earlier in the year I did an All Time Low music video.
Yeah.
We shot in Nashville, and we were supposed to shoot in an adoption center, like an animal adoption center, but we couldn't find one that would close for us. So it's like, fuck, like how do we get all the coverage we need? And there's like going to be customers coming in with like dogs on leashes, like it was kind of a nightmare, but like, you just got to be on your toes. And, you know, we figured it out. Like for that example, we just came in at like 6 a.m. and shot all the performance before the sun was even up, and just lit it like daylight.
Yeah. And
got all the performance done before they opened, you know. So it's just about being on your toes, having that DIY spirit, and just making it work.
Right. Yeah. I feel like it wouldn't be a true, I guess, music video focused podcast if I didn't ask you maybe what are some of your favorite music videos that maybe you didn't have a hand in, but you just can't help but shout out either the people that produced those or the bands that were involved as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, just going back, as cringeworthy as it is now, like, I mean, I'm not even embarrassed to say, like, straight up for me, just because of how influential they were when I was like in high school, like the Fuse shit, like some of My Chemical Romance music videos are still, those are like Helena. It's fucking, that's a classic music video.
Right.
I think if that music video inspired me so much, like the color red popping out, like a dynamic performance, the larger than life like location. I mean, I'm not saying I've made anything to that caliber, but that's for sure. I love Smashing Pumpkins music videos. Those hugely inspired me. Yeah, I mean, those Under Oath. I mean, these aren't like videos I go back and watch every day of my life, obviously, but
Right.
I still like, I think the Helena music video, I mean, all My Chemical Romance music videos are amazing.
Sure.
Not like I'm bumping that. I don't bump that day in, day out.
Right.
But also, like, I love, I listen to a lot of hip hop, and I love pop and hip hop music videos. And I'm starting to do more solo artists I'm working with. And so I'm really inspired by those. You know, a lot of some of the later Knocked Loose music videos that I did on their last record was like the inspiration was a hip hop music video.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just about like lighter, like the Mistake Likes Fractures. You know, everybody wants like a dark warehouse. So I was like, well, let's shoot something really bright and clean. And it's about color rather than like putting them in a dark warehouse where someone's like getting strangled. You know what I mean? It's still violent and like fits the song, but like, so I'm inspired by all kinds of shit. It's not just about like dark and heavy music, just because my musical taste is all over the place.
Yeah. And being able to take influence from that and then throw your spin on it is I've seen that time and time again for songs that were written or music videos or album artwork. So yeah, I think it's important to not feel like you have to stay within a bubble, so to speak.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool.
And I think as I've gotten older, I think the alternative genre, hardcore, especially when you're young, like it's, for me, I mean, this is just my opinion, take it or leave it. I'm like the old jaded bastard 30-year-old guy, but you know, only listen to this. Like, dude, I love like country pop. Like I'll listen to whatever. I'm totally a sucker for whatever. And I feel no way about it. I don't give a fuck what people think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think people who don't know me think that I've only listened to like Code Orange and Knocked Loose or Harm's Way. It's like, I mean, I might bump that when I'm at the gym, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not listening to that. So
right, yeah, it's In Fear is maybe not the first song you want to listen to when you wake up or whatever. Yeah, yeah, that's sweet. Cool. Well, Max, I got one more question and then we'll start to wrap it up here. But I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I definitely hope this is a piece of content that maybe pushes at least one person who maybe has a opinion about doing music videos for hardcore metal or whatever it is cliche. Maybe what's the thing you can kind of send off to kind of push people over the edge in that direction of like, no, like this is a worthwhile thing, whether it's you hitting up someone in your local town to shoot something on their an earlier version of you essentially, or maybe hitting up a larger entity to make something truly special. What would you say to that?
I would say to them, like, if it's something you're interested in and want to do, I think now is a better time than ever to do it, because I think, and even as we, now the pandemic has hit, like everything is about online. It's like right now we don't have the thing of a show and touring, so there's going to be so much need as we go further into this, even beyond, like without the pandemic, there's already a need for viralness and online content, and that's everything. You know what I mean? It's more so than ever before. So, and I think it's only going to grow. So the longer you wait to jump in, the less of an advantage you're going to have in getting into that pot.
Yeah.
But there should never be an excuse. Like, straight up, the internet is the most powerful thing. And I live in fucking random ass Louisville, Kentucky. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, how much money you have. If it's something you want to do and you present yourself right and you put yourself out there constantly with no fear of like getting rejected or looking ugly or like sending in cold email, you're going to have some level of success. And yeah, if you're inspired by like your local hardcore band, do it. Like, I mean, I remember there was a day when Knock Loose was the local hardcore band, and now they're like,
yeah, that's true.
big fans of hardcore. So, I mean, that's just the way the internet pops people off, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So my thing is, you don't need help from anybody else. Utilize the resources of the internet. And even if you don't think you have resources, you have resources. You have friends that you can finagle to come help you.
Right.
You have your dad has a connection to a guy who has an empty space that you can shoot for free, or whatever the fuck it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to just think outside the box and stop waiting for someone to a YouTube channel to come tell you how to like become a director. Just figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everybody's path as a director or content creator looks different. So don't feel like you're doing something wrong if it's not exactly how I get work or make money or get to work with artists. Like, utilize the resources you have. And if you're interested in it, then the only thing stopping you is yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Very, very wise words coming straight from the heart. And, the thing that I've always said to bands is like, however a music video looks, like the thing that I always say is like, it's just packaging your song for video distribution. That's really all it is. So even if you just want to rip a bunch of clips from YouTube and like have a bunch of scary stuff, like that's still considered a music video. It's not, you don't have to perform in a forest and headbang in unison. Cool, Max. Well, again, thank you so much. This has been a blast. How do people keep up on social with you? What's coming up? Anything you want to tease before we end the show?
Totally, yeah. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Maximum Films. Just hit me up. I'm always down to talk, and I do my best to respond to shit. I'm looking forward to getting back to work, dude. I've been staying busy during quarantine, but finally we have some live action shit that's going to happen, and looking like end of May, and June to be busy for me. So I'm just thankful to keep doing this and pay my mortgage and call it good, so
yeah. And I'm super grateful that you took some time out of your day to chat with me and give some people at home or people who are watching some bits of knowledge, but also things for myself too, because Scoped takes up a lot of my time, but I definitely want to do more music videos once things cool down here. So yeah,
thank you, man.
Thank you. This has been a blast. Thanks for listening.